is Margot, and I have been associated very closely with the Change Awards, as I have founded the Change Awards a few years ago. It's quite lovely to see how this how this project is moving forward, and that we're getting a lot of traction, and effectively that it is seen as a huge value-added opportunity for the change management profession to start getting recognized. So I'm really, really pleased that we are being supported by the profession here in the UK, but also globally, as in this year, in 2024, we have opened our doors to global applications, and we have had quite a few of them. So 2025, fingers crossed, we'll have more. Today's session is called the Change Talks. We have 2 sessions like that booked in our calendars. So one is today, and the second one is on the 10th of October. Effectively, this is a roundtable type of event where we meet the winners of the Change Awards 2024 and are talking to the winners about their experience, their view on the development of the profession, and anything else that we may deem interesting to us. The idea of this event is that people are encouraged to have their cameras switched on, and also are encouraged to participate actively in this session. So even although this session is an online session, ideally we act and behave as if it was in a room full of people. So everybody, just make sure that you have your camera switched. If you're eating lunch, that's fine, but just make sure you either raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask a question, or leave a question in the chat box. We are going to be monitoring that. As an FYI, this session is recorded. The recording will be available after the session, obviously, once we have uploaded it to relevant channels, and we will be also writing some hopefully interesting documents and papers after this session is completed, and after October session is also completed. I know that our friends at the IN Group and Investigo, namely, are also going to be doing something with us and the winners. So really looking forward to that. And let me just, I'll try to change my presentation. So without further ado, I just wanted to introduce 2 of our partners for the 2024, the IN Group, and we have Karen here. Karen, give us a wave. Hello, hello. And SYSDOC. So going back to IN Group, so IN Group is a company that consists of lots of different smaller companies, but today I just wanted to, given that Karen is here with us, I just wanted to highlight the Investigo arm. So Investigo is a talent partner for the Change Awards, and personally I have used them in the past to help some of my clients to fulfill the roles that they had. And I myself have also found a couple of roles through Karen. So I'm going to hand it over now to Karen to say hello and just to introduce himself.
Thank you, Margot. And it's great to obviously be on this event. I remember obviously the first ones we did after the 2023 awards, and it's been amazing to see how this initiative and this community to get together has progressed, and especially seeing people that I've been working with for many years, including Margot as the founder. Margot was one of the first people I met when I returned back to the UK and started at the IN Group, to see how her career and obviously the actual Change Awards has developed. But as I was saying before, everyone that has been involved, who I've also been working with 5 years, seen some of them win awards. That's been an amazing thing to see, and just seeing how much that meant to them. You know, Juliet Hubbard was one of those individuals. She won an award at the last one in 2024 as independent consultant, and I've been working with her for many, many years. She's an amazing woman, and to see her pick up that award and seeing how much it meant to her really, really, like, you know, made me feel so happy and fulfilled being part of this and actually getting people involved. So thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for having us involved with this. It's really good to bring this to the Change community and see how it's progressing, and yeah, it's really special. So thank you.
No, pleasure. We love you. Have you on board. Okay, so our host. I just wanted to, if people can see, I hope people see my screen because I struggle with this Zoom from time to time. So Paul Clavering. Paul Clavering is a phenomenal guy. He comes from IT. But he loves change management, and I think his personal experience when working in IT for many years was that actually, well, nothing is going to move if we don't move people. And then after a while, he has set up a company called Just Enough Change, and now also is working on the change tracker. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Paul, and then I'm going to flick to an additional slide after this slide, where Paul is going to introduce the winners. And hopefully, by now we should have at least majority of the winners from 2024 join us on this call. So Paul, over to you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Margot. And it's really nice to see some really familiar names on this screen, some from actually way back when, and I won't say who. But I'm really honoured, and I've known Margot for, we were just talking before, quite a few years. I won't say how many. But really fortunate that working with Margot and others have really helped me define what I think change management is. And you'll see that's a flavour today. But a really short summary, just so you know who I am. I started my life off as a very technical person. Imagine sitting in a dark room with the blinds down, coding, that was me. Realised that basically I needed to start to speak to people, took some opportunities, moved to training, and then moved into really sort of developing technical people into project management and then into change management. And that route actually led me to CIO, which is desperately where I wanted to be. I was a CIO of a decent sized company, but I hated it. I was there a year, hated it. Thought it was what I wanted, wasn't. So basically since then, I've been on a little bit of a journey to discover where I want to be. So Just Enough Change was born out of me generally upsetting PMO departments. If there's any PMO people here, I'm going to apologise, because if I can find a rule to break it to get change done, I probably will. And Just Enough Change is really about, you know, focusing on delivery over, but not at the expense. I do governance, but basically, you know, it's about taking people with us rather than filling in forms. So I worked at quite a few companies, discovered that, you know, lots of companies ask people to change and they don't realize the impact that has or the size of change we're asking people to change. Okay. And I've got something really important in my life which really brings this home. So I've got a daughter who turns 18 in November. She's got special needs. She's one of only a small handful of people in the UK and in the world, probably less than 1,000 with the condition that she's got. And she struggles with grade. She's only got black and white. So when we talk about change, you know, there's always different shades of grey, but for some people, there's not. There's black and white. So basically, I think Just Enough Change was really born out of understanding that people are different. There's not one approach for everybody. And empathy is probably our biggest thing that we need to think about. Before we start to introduce the most important people on this call, the winners, I just want to take literally 2 seconds to talk about the change tracker. It's really opportune. We're about to launch a brand new solution which helps organizations that are probably quite change immature. And what this does is it really sort of understands a company about how stakeholder management and change impact analysis and benefits are all linked in together to help drive that overall picture. So I'm not going to sell it any more than that, apart from to say to people, if you want to go and register your interest to have a look at it when it is released, go and have a look at thechangetracker.com. There's a bit there where you can just leave your details, and we'll let you know when we're going to launch that. That's quite exciting. So I'm spending most of my time doing that as well as client work. Feel free to connect with me. Feel free to connect with Just Enough Change, both on LinkedIn. But now let's talk about what I think is the most important part of this call, and this is the change winners. And I'm going to get all the change winners, as I shout their names out, I'm actually going to just get them to do a real short intro on, you know, a little bit about them, a little bit what they won, but basically just to let you guys know who they are. But before I do that, and I've learned this since COVID, we need to have a few house rules. Okay, so, and it sounds really strict, but it's not. Number one, be respectful. Okay, and what I mean by that is you don't have to agree with what people are saying. Just be respectful. That's their opinion and that's their view of the world. Feel free to challenge, okay, but basically be respectful. The second one is be involved. I think there are 35 people on this call, okay, so I'm expecting lots of questions. You guys will ask a lot better questions than I've got, and I've got a list of questions if you don't answer them. And believe me, I'd rather have your questions than mine. So if you do have questions, please raise them in the chat window, ideally. And then finally, give examples where you can. So this is really reaching out to the winners. So when we're explaining something, if somebody's going to say something, I sometimes find if you can put a story behind what you're telling, that helps land what you're trying to explain better. Okay, theory is great. You know, theory and practice is even better. Okay, so that's to the winners. Okay, so what I'll do without further ado, let me start with April. So I think April's on the call.
Yes, I'm here. Hello, good morning.
Morning. Do you want to just explain a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm April Callis Birchmeyer, and I began my career in change management on my first ERP project. I had come from the world of training and communication, and I founded my company in 2002. I started working on large ERP projects kind of primarily, and then moved into some interesting programs and projects. And about in 2013, 2014, the state of Michigan, I'm in the US, state of Michigan reached out to me to help implement their large Medicaid expansion. So it was a healthcare program expansion. It would be too confusing to try to explain it, but it was a 10 million stakeholders that I had to deal with. And it was a large initiative. We were very successful. And I also focus on the CCMP and help people prepare for that. And I have 100 people who have recently passed the CCMP.
Fantastic. And congratulations, April. That sounds brilliant.
Thank you.
Let me move to Kate next. Kate,
Thank you, Paul. Well, the Sunday name's up, people will see it as Katrina, but I normally go by Kate, as you can tell. I am a senior business change lead in ASDA, and I won the large scale transformation award this year. I've been officially in change roles 4 years now, but my background is in organizational change, organizational learning and development. I am ProSci accredited and very much the people side of change. So a lot like you, Paul, and there'll be people on this call that know me well, will back up, don't necessarily love the governance and the forms. Change is not perfect, but it definitely can be better, and it's all about the people. My latest project is in ASDA. We're going through a large transformation, and me and my team focus mainly on ERP, finance and procurement implementation this year. And yeah, I think we did as well as we did because I'm not an accountant, and I hope not to offend any accountants on the call. But I do take that as my superpower, that we are the change, not the SMEs, or as we call them here. So yeah, I'm a busy working mum of 2. And on a Saturday or Sunday, you'll see me around the edge of a football pitch in the rain, normally with a cup of coffee.
So I've heard loads, Kate, about the ASDA project. I'm a football coach, so I'm usually the guy that's getting shouted at by the kids and the parents, to be fair.
No, never.
So is Esther here? I don't think wasn't sure whether she made it or not. Okay, come back.
Yes, I think, sorry, I think Esther has emailed that she might be late or she might not be able to make it today. Apologies for that.
That's okay, no problem. We've got Sarah. Sarah on the call? No. Okay. I'm not sure. Juliet, is Juliet on the call? No. By the way, I take silence to mean negative, so just so we know, or unless it's positive if I get what I want. So
I think people might be joining later, but yeah, let's just go.
Let's go through the ones we've got,
and then just start the session.
Sharon's here. I think I've seen Sharon.
Hi, yes, I'm here. Thanks, Paul. Okay, so hi, everyone. My name is Sharon Mysinski. I don't think I know many of you, but I was introduced into the Change Awards organization last year by a colleague who won previously, Liam Crosdale. And Liam had joined our organization and nominated me for this role or this award because of all the work that he learned that I had done prior to his being there. So I'm very honored to have won the award and to be here today. A little bit about me. I am in the US. I reside between Illinois and Florida. I'm currently in Florida right now today with a hurricane in the area. So still have power, so that's a win. I've been doing change management probably my whole career without knowing that that was what I was doing. So I got certified in change management through ProSci in 2020. And actually was able to get into a role within the organization focusing on change management shortly thereafter. But like I said, I've been involved in the pharma industry my entire career and have had to stay people focused, mostly on the commercial side of the organization and helping our sales force through many changes. Now in the transformation office, I get to work on very large scale initiatives to help support our corporate strategic plan. One of the ones that I'm focusing on right now is bringing agile ways of working into the organization. And so that's been a really interesting and fun one to be a part of. And then just what I'm here to talk about today is about building the change capability. So I'm happy to share my journey of building that capability within the organization. So thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sharon. Ravina. Have I said that correctly?
That's correct. Yes, you were on the point. Thank you, Paul. So I appreciate it. So good afternoon, everyone. A lot of people I know and some of the new faces. So hello, everyone. My name is Ravina. I'm based out of India. I got to know about Change Awards and Margot 2 years back when we were venturing about taking some of the opportunities and put ourselves out in the world that what change management really means to us. So this is our second year stint with knowing Change Awards and Margot specifically to say this, that she's doing an amazing work for all of us, bringing all of us out there in one channel. So thanks a lot, Margot and Paul, for doing this. So to tell about myself, I have about 14 years of experience in change. I actually started as an entrepreneur building a home-based chocolate business, but very shortly realized that it was not something that was my calling. Then I joined a company called Bristol-Cohen, which is based out of US into supply chain, and did change management for them for about 12, 13 years. My very first project was into the business side with procurement, and for 3 years, I grilled myself to learn business and technology, but then I realized that this is not where I belonged. So that's how I started my time period on change management, realizing that where I wanted to be, where my passion was, and started change management practice within the company. In my last project that I did, again, back to circle of life where it belongs, so I did another procurement plus a white collar plus blue collar sort of implementation, again attached to technology. And this is where change just had a more deeper experience for me and had a great learning curve. Personally, as I said this, that I'm based in India. Until last year, I was in the US. It's been a great cultural shift, and just being in community of people whom I've met through all of these years in many parts of the world, belonging to change has been a great learning experience. So all those out there who've joined us, kudos to you for spirits in terms of joining in for change, and looking forward to this discussion.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ravina. Truly international, isn't it? Montreal and India and Warrington. So then we've also got Robin. Let's go to you, Robin.
Well, I'm up in the Northwest as well, Paul. So I'm going to say A up to everybody. I'm Robin. I come from Preston. I'm a managing consultant at SYSDOC. My journey, I stumbled into change about 20 years ago. Like Sharon said, not really realizing that I'd probably been doing it all my career. So people call me a storyteller by trade. And that's my superpower. As I know somebody said superpowers before. I'm a massive advocate for people and culture and cultural transformation in organizations. And I was very, very, very honored to win the Change Influencer Award in the private sector for the work that I've been doing with Edwards Vacuum. So that's a very short bit about me. I'm also a football dad. I also have to stand on the sidelines in the rain, and it's not. And Paul, we've got similar hairdos, right? So we kind of don't have the worry about getting our hair wet. But I'm still shouting on the sidelines and getting told off by my son for doing that as well. But that's a little bit about me.
So, and don't ever stop. I've got 11, well, we've got more than 11, but we have 11 change agents on the field every weekend, and they actually listen more than the day job. So, and then finally, we've got Rose.
Hello, I actually managed to navigate my mute button successfully this time, so I'm feeling very chuffed. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I can't believe still that I actually won my category, and I really have been polishing my trophy almost daily. I am also a change manager. I've been working in the change management space for about 4.5 years. And actually before that, I was working as a business psychologist. So I did 2 rather painful master's degrees to become accredited, and then decided that actually it was change projects that I really wanted to be a part of. I got my award for an ERP project. So April and Kate, I see you as my fellow ERP buddies. And it actually involved spending a lot of time in a chocolate factory in Switzerland. So it was really a dream role. With lots and lots of chocolate sampling. I think my dentist was quite shocked when I returned. And I am dialing in from London.
That's it. Okay. Well, thank you. And it's honestly, it's the one thing I really love when we do these things is the diversity that we've got. So we talk about change managers and we talk about doing change. And I'm going to start off with the first question. And then Margot, I'm going to come back to you and see if anybody's raised any questions that we can move on from. Okay. Well, let's start off with one that I've got that I think is really relevant. A few people have said they've been in change a long time, all their lives. I'm really interested over the last few years how you think change management has changed. So think about its embedding in a culture, its recognition. I know we've got some behavioral psychologists even on the call. So basically, how do we think it's changed over the years? And the person that I'm going to start with is you, April. I think you started off with saying all of your experience you're going through. So I'd like you to start with that, and we'll get others to chip in what you say.
Well, for me, I feel like change management has become a recognized profession. Being a change management practitioner is seen as a real job now. Because previously, when I first began my career as a change professional, I was fortunate that I had a leader who, had this core change management team. There were 3 of us. I was the only non-Accenture person. I was supposed to stay at the client that had actually hired me. I was supposed to stay on with them afterward, learn everything that I could from our team, and then stay with them. But I have a bit of wanderlust, and so I said, "Oh, this is so much fun! I want to do this in bigger and more places." And so I have since been an independent consultant pretty much my entire career. But one of the things that I've really seen, and I know you have, we have a number of different change organizations, but the establishment of the Association of Change Management Professionals in 2011 was, I think, a game changer in the sense that it gave a home for many people to come to without necessarily having a certification, but having a community made a terrific difference. And so being a part of that organization and then volunteering to assist them. And I was one of the authors that worked on the standard for change management, not a perfect document. We're adapting that right now, but it certainly was a terrific step forward in bringing that community into some sort of standard alignment, which I think is really important. So, you know, in 2016, they rolled out the CCMP exam, and I was one of the first 100 to take and pass that, which was very daunting because I had worked on the standard. And then I was in the pilot group, so I took my exam, and then I had to wait 3 weeks for a letter in the mail to tell me that I had passed. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'll just die if I worked on the standard and I don't pass this exam. I'll be really embarrassed. So I feel like this establishment of sort of a professional ground, a level where we could all sort of meet and declare ourselves as change management professionals and then advance that discipline, I think is really important. I know CMI has also been very important and critical. So for me, some of these changes, just in the sense of like, this exists as a profession now, really seems like a big step forward and a huge stake that we put in the ground, that we exist to be a profession, not just as an extension of IT or an extension of a project team. We're really our own profession. We have our own standards. We have our own sense of how things work. And we're all incredibly focused on the people side of change and helping people move through that change, which I just love.
And I think, you know, if you meet a change manager, for me, they'll say that it's people's the most important thing. And I absolutely agree with you. I know, Rose, I'd like to come back to you, because I know in the write-up that were provided, you talked about a real life example. Was it an adoption room or something you had?
Yes. So I think the entire project that I was a part of last year was really just all about focusing on people and getting them to change their behavior. And also there was a lot of mindset change, because for a bit of context, what we were actually asking of the individuals that I was working with was for them to make a huge change to all of their processes, their systems, and their ways of working, that actually in the short term would potentially put them in a worse position than they were working on currently, because their systems had been so bespoke and they'd used to be working on a really local level, not a global level. So to kind of take them on that journey, we set up in their factory a room which we called the Learning and Adoption Room. So this was to sort of take them through the ADCAR phases. I know someone mentioned that they were ProSci qualified. So it was really kind of about taking them through their awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement stages. And we put up a lot of content, and some people actually referred to this learning and adoption room almost a bit like a museum. So we had kind of screenshots of what the new system would look like. We had all the benefits. We did a lot of things that were persona based. So we had what the changes would look like for specific roles or departments, and loads of interactive pieces as well, like scannable QR codes that kind of gave different voiceovers. And this was really, I think, also to get people excited about the change, but also to do what I've mentioned, that expectation management piece, and to really get buy-in from them, so they kind of knew what was coming. They even knew the bits that might not feel so great in the short term. And the room was designed to evolve as we kind of transitioned through the project. So we had like a countdown to go live. And what was really nice is it helped us build co-ownership as well. And I think that's really the secret that I've found in my experience to successful change management, is that really as a change manager, a part of your job should be as a facilitator. You're kind of helping the business transition through that change. So by the end, you know, they were putting up their own content. Someone was saying, oh, I think it would be really cool if we, you know, had a different QR segment that, you know, introduced this new process. And I was like, fantastic. Yes, make it, let's get it up on the wall. So yeah, I did enjoy the learning and adoption room.
Fantastic. Okay, and before I move on to questions, Robin, I'm just going to pick on you next. Basically, I think you talk about storytelling. So that I also have that super skill. I think get away with murder, I think, as well. But basically, you know, how's that transitioned? I mean, how's it transitioned from being just telling stories to actually helping drive change in the business?
Yeah, and it's really great. I think it's one of the key tools that we should all have in our back pocket, right? Being able to explain things through that kind of narrative way of doing things. I think it's changed a lot in regards to relating it to day-to-day life, right? And I think for me, one of the things that we used on the project that I was on, because my project was based both in the US and in Mexico. And so that's quite difficult when you're trying to tell the same consistent story about how you're going to do things. If you've not heard of it, there's a fantastic thing called Hero's Journey. It is probably one of the biggest and oldest things ever created. Go and have a look it up. Most films are created using that framework. And it's about what you said, Paul. How do you bring that to life in regards to making that feel like something that can be connected to by people who are actually being impacted by what's actually going on? So very much around how do you generate the ordinary world narrative? How do you get that call to adventure, right? How do you actually get people buying into and connecting to what you're trying to achieve? And I loved Rose's view of her room, because that's one of the best things you can do, is by bringing people into something and showing it visually, because we're all visual people, right? And storytelling doesn't just have to be around words. It can be around how you present that visually. And one of the things that we did, very similar, Rose, we had a big room. We had a big room and just put loads of stuff up where people could come in and they could just ask questions. And it was very much about getting people talking to each other and connecting to the story. And you don't have to be a huge, massive kind of proponent of building words. It's about building places where people can feel they can actually have that discussion. So that's what's changed for me a lot, is actually how do you actually create those narratives that people can actually buy into, and use that to influence people on their journey.
Okay, and fantastic. I forgot what you said, so people to go and have a look at. What was that again?
I think April's put it in there. Hero's Journey, Joseph Campbell. If you've never seen it, it is the archetypal way of actually creating a story. There's about 12 things inside that, but I would suggest that you need to really look at the real key elements, which is what's the ordinary world like today? What's the call to adventure that we want to actually write and tell people about? Yeah. It's about then getting people to help deliver that story, because leaders can't do it on their own, right? It's got to be done within the whole of the organization. And then it's about testing and embedding the story. And my favorite bit of it is crossing the threshold. So when you get to the point where you know you're going to get there, okay, how do you tell that narrative so that people can actually start saying, hey, this is great. You know, this is going to be the place that we want to be, because stories are around about how we think, how we feel, and how then we behave.
Right, absolutely. Brilliant, thank you. Margot, has there been any questions come in from the audience?
So we have actually two questions. We might be skipping kind of subject to subject now, but Jenny Tyne, and I apologize if I mispronounce your surname or name, Jenny. She's interested in growing internal capability in organizations, so capability for change. And what she's saying is that the specialist change management roles are spreading across the organization as a core competency. And whether we do understand as a change management profession, whether we do perceive it as a threat of some sorts to a profession, or do we perceive it as something that is going to make our professional roles a little bit easier? So if we had that change management capability ingrained within the organization on different roles, not necessarily just change management related roles, is it easier for the change management professional then to go into the organization, starts doing what we do, or should the change management role include a element of coaching? So I guess kind of two different ways of looking at the same problem.
Okay, Jenny, is that anything you want to add to that before I go to the audience?
Off. Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely it. Thank you, Margot. It is for me, it's the difficulty we always strike is around ownership of change. And as far as my experience tells me, it's critical to have team leaders and managers and leaders on the same page. And then it just, it flipped in my mind at one point to say, well, why are they not change managers with a small c and a small m? Because they're dealing with it every day. Their role should be, absolutely taking part in that. So why not treat it as a core management competency, and how do you go about bringing that in? So it's about maturity. It's about enterprise change management, I guess.
Fantastic. And one question, I see that on a regular basis, the change manager versus change leader, where does change sit, all of that. I'm going to go to Sharon, because Sharon, I understand you won the Best Capability Builder 2024. So you probably be interested in your views on this.
Yeah, thanks. So my perspective is obviously within my organization. So I want to just put that on the table. Within my organization, when I joined the transformation office as leading the change management effort within the organization, it was an interesting introduction. What I found is there was pockets of change throughout the organization happening, and there were a lot of people that were very interested in it. But there was no owner to the point that was brought up, right? There was no one who was leading and bringing it together. I have to tell you, one of the things I found was there was like 5 different playbooks on change management within the organization. One from Deloitte, one from McKinsey, one from, I don't even know. There was like, I was like, oh my gosh, if I find another PDF of a playbook, I'm going to go insane. So I thought what would be good is, when I got started in it is, let's understand where our maturity level is. And it wasn't good. We were about a 2.3, which isn't horrible, right? We weren't a 1, but we were at a 2.3. And that was based on a ProSci maturity assessment that we did. And it was a small group that we assessed. So then we're like, okay, so now we need a little bit more input. Let's go and get some internal research. So we brought in an academic professional to come in and do some interviews with leaders and others within the organization to really understand where people see change and change management within the organization. We again found they didn't think it was good, but they couldn't really say why, other than they thought communication was not good. I don't know if you get this a lot, but in my organization, change is communication, and that is it. And so that was a big thing we had to overcome, and there's still a path to get there. And so it was really starting to bring people together. So that, when I was thinking about the superpower aspects of things, what is my superpower? It's about bringing people together. So I found out all these change people within the organization and, really got them together in group discussions and understanding what we need to do within the organization. And we started with a community of practice. So it was a small community of practice at first. We had 25 people. It is now close to 500. Now, granted, we have an organization of about 15,000 people. So I don't want to say that is life-changing. But what it showed is there was a great deal of interest in change and change management. And so this was an opportunity to start from a grassroots perspective to bring it in and to help educate people about the discipline. So these are just a few of the things we did. We also found through our internal research that one of the challenges, again, was all these playbooks and all these different methodologies that were people using was not consistent within the organization. So one of the things that I worked with this lovely group of change experts in the organization was to build out what is the framework that we want to utilize within the organization, and do we have a portal where people can go and get resources so we can start to show some consistency? We did that. So we built our framework out. It's custom, but I'll be honest, it models every one of the change frameworks out there. And I'm honestly not a huge framework person, which is kind of weird to say. I think you go into change and you have to assess every change a little differently. And you bring in whatever aspects of your knowledge that you have. And then, yes, do I use Prozac? Yes. Do I use others? Yes. And I just try and bring it into whatever I am working on. Anyways, so that's some of the things that we did initially to get started. We did reassess our maturity assessment within 18 months after that one, and it did improve a little. We went up to a 2.8. We thought that was, significant. We're still not at a 3. So what I'm telling you is this is a journey. Look at it as a journey. This is not something that changes overnight, especially in a large organization. So I don't know if that helps, but that's kind of a little bit of our path that we took in my organization.
Can I bring Kate in? Kate, so obviously your background, learning development, cultural changes. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think obviously my experience in ASDA, there was definitely pockets of people with change in the title. It's not a hidden secret. We were owned by Walmart for 25 years. So there was quite a few different playbooks, templates, all versions. We had project managers who did the change. We had project managers who didn't understand what change was. So we had a definitely a mix. Some of the things that I found that helped, it can be a little bit. So to Jenny's point that was brought up, like, are we doing ourselves a disservice by giving change skills to the leaders? Well, actually, no, because what I've always been very vocal of, it's not our change. I'm not changing your ERP system. I'm not changing how you balance the books. I'm not making this more difficult for you. It's the business, but it's the leaders that need to own that change. And even the colleagues. So when we do business readiness sessions, and we do them from really early on, even when people told me I was crazy, like, you don't actually, it's not even built yet, Kate. What are you going to tell them about what's happening? And I'm like, well, if you don't start talking to them now, they're going to make up their own story, because we all know people can make up a good story. And we really put them into it to own the change, even so much so that the business readiness templates, I'm sure everyone has one, of things that needed to be done by the functions, they owned it with us. They went in and updated it and told us what they were doing. We also tried to do a lot of change behavioral capability upskilling. So we did offsites with the finance days. I did pull them up a past background, and we used to do change activities and just how they're going to cope, because ASDA's transformation is quite documented and very different numbers of press, and we're doing a lot. We're doing more than you would look at it and go, they're absolutely off the rocker, and we probably are, but it's the colleagues that are just getting that layer on the layer on the layer. So whether you are a junior like team leader, whether you're a manager, senior manager, director, or even the exec, and it did take a while. I have colleagues on here that will be probably nodding with the cameras off, of the push to get the real senior leadership to own the change so they can land it. I don't think it does us a disservice. I think it's needed. We can't do it on our own. If we do it on our own, we are just a toolkit and comms and a framework, and then you kind of roll off into the sunset, and you don't get the adoption, you don't get the levels. And for me personally, I think that's then where you still, will be in the coffee queue and hear the story. Oh, do you remember when they did that change 5 years ago? That was awful. And then you think, oh, I'm just going to hide the change management badge that we're all so proud of, right? So yeah, that would be my take on it. I think it is really, really important. It's not always easy, because if they don't like the change, if change is bumpy, if it's transitional, I know Rose referenced, like, certainly in ASDA, it has got a lot harder and will be a lot harder for a long time until it is better. But if they're not leading the change from the front, you don't have your managers and your team leaders bought in, that's it.
Fantastic. I echo all of that. And actually, some of the things that you're saying, and again, a bit of a selfless plug here, you know, the change tracker, I don't think you should be wedded to one way of doing things. You should have a common way of capturing change impact, you know, capturing what stakeholders you've got, and they're linked together. But how you engage with stakeholders will be different to ASDA as it would be to any other organisation. So there you go, another shameless plug. Right. So before we ask one of the other questions, I just want to build on that, because somebody said something and it was a bit of a throwaway comment, but it was about being successful. And one of the most common things I always see, an age-old question, change manager, that's the soft and fluffy stuff, isn't it? It's just making people feel happy. And I want to delve into this. And Ravina, I'm going to come to you in a second. But what I want to do is how important is data metrics in change management? Okay, so you know, how do we define the success of that? So we've got reports in the change tracker, and some companies will find that useful and some won't. But how have you found it? So Ravina, do you want to give us your knowledge on data and metrics in change management?
Yes, thanks a lot, Paul. And just to give a context before I start answering to this question, so I had won this award for technology implementation, and for everyone who may have done technology, non-technology projects in their life, they would know it that for them, data is very important. Data speaks a lot of volumes about how do you define success. So let's talk about data metrics in my sphere, which is technology. A large amount of our life has been spent in doing technology implementations, talking about what the benefits and so many things that we've been advocating in that journey. But in my opinion, I think the way I see it is this, that it's not about the number of deliverables or activities that change does to count the success of it. Also, the fact that now we've come to that age level where data means not by how many people have logged in onto a system or how many people are actually using it. The part of data which makes it possible for us to evaluate the success of change is really a bit defining to the business objectives of the projects. I think just taking smaller examples of anything that you've done, the beauty of that success has never come about how many people actually used it, but by the benefits of any amount of change that occurred. So people on the call, you may have done so many different types of projects, but if I was to just talk from my experience as such, the adoption of it has never been accomplished into two apple-to-apple combination just by evaluating the data fetched from different reports, but by literally taking the matrices of KPIs and what it means to people. So while it's really not possible for us to humanly track the KPIs at a individual level, but what I feel, Paul and all the fellow change makers, that data out here means a lot for change to define it at an org level and what your benefits are. And this is where we can go back and stitch the story that when we start any project, any initiative, any story about change, linking it to the same success, that why did you even invent that change, is where the true beauty lies. And I have seen deeper amount of recognition for change when you've defined that back as such. So as much as I want to propagate a lot of data that can be brought in, but the highest amount of candidature that I've seen is defining it to the goals of the project, goals of the business. Secondly, to the IT, which is really about the benefits. And then thirdly, this is where I would probably put the change management success as well, which is defined a lot by productivity levels. So this is how I would layer it down, Paul, and just feel that this has been my experience in doing so.
So, April, I want to come to you to build on that. Obviously, you've been here for a while. You've helped build these, you know, these certifications, I guess, and ways of doing it. How have you seen data creep into sort of measures of success?
Well, I think data really is important. And I think there's qualitative and quantitative data, right? And we need both. We cannot just rely on numbers. We can't, you know, rely on these looking at logins, looking at numbers of users. I think that sort of parsing out of numbers really is opposed to the whole idea of change management, right? It's the qualitative analysis that I think is also incredibly important, and that is focus groups and labs and having conversations on how are things going. I think that when we're using both types of data, we can tell a much more complete story. When we're only using numbers, when we're only using KPIs, we are not telling the entire story of how things are going and what that level of adoption is. I also feel like many times I come into a project late, and I'm sure you all resonate with that. It's like things are starting to head off the tracks, and someone's like, oh gosh, I think we're supposed to have change management. And they call and they say, come help us. And you're like, could you tell me about this change? Well, you know, we're required to do this. We're going to be out of support. Well, that is not a change rationale. That's not a reason for change. Let's really get to that benefit. And so sometimes we're getting to the assessment and the development of the strategy of how we're going to measure the benefit of the change late. And when we're coming in late on that piece, it's really tough, but we cannot skip it. We have to identify, this is how we plan to measure our success. This is how we plan to measure adoption. This is how we're going to do this. But many times we're running so fast trying to catch up, and everybody's just asking, like, where's the communication plan? That's all they care about. Where is it? Where is it? And instead of like spending that time to really define how we're going to quantify and qualify that success, we are running and doing what they want. So we get to our execution phase and we're like, oh shoot, I don't have a really great way to define success. So I think that one of the keys is that we have to insist upfront, as soon as our upfront is, even if they're 6 weeks out of execution and going live, and we're thinking, you know, I have no time to do anything. It's really imperative to create the standard for how we plan to measure success. Like, this is what we're looking for in terms of our feedback from our customers, in terms of feedback from our stakeholders, you know, internal and external. This is what we expect in terms of numbers. But I think we cannot do it if we only look at quantitative data.
Perfect. Margot, go back to you. Any additional questions?
No, but loving the conversation about measurement of change, because it's extremely difficult. And I just, on the personal side, I think it's very, I think it's biased towards the type of the organization, the culture within the organization. If you're doing the type of change when it's on the technical side, let's say driven by IT, sponsored by IT, it's often very difficult to argue that you need that qualitative instead of only quantitative data. So my experience, at least, but not like it's impossible, but sometimes it's just lots of battles. Another question that we have received from Bruce Pentreth, and again, apologies if I am mispronouncing your name. He's interested in the velocity of change and maturity of organizations. It's really interesting because I have myself also started thinking about that, as I think that the organizational change management has a broader scope than we perceive, because it's an evolving. I feel that this is an evolving discipline, and there is more that it can offer beyond just your usual organizational change management. And I'm alluding to particularly to innovation. So Bruce's question is about, can a more experienced or mature change organization tolerate a higher rate of change, and thereby being more flexible and or agile? And then additional layer, which I'm going to add to this, is that if an organization is an organization that presents a culture of change and innovation, that change is becoming therefore more transitional, and therefore I would think that any additional change that needs to be implemented, even if it's a regulatory change or, like April have mentioned, the end of the system, and we need to have a new system in place, should be in a way flagged earlier and therefore tackled earlier. So the question is velocity of change and maturity of organizations, and can a more experienced organization tolerate a higher rate of change?
So, Bruce, I don't know if you can add anything to that. Is that a theoretical question, or is that something you're facing day to day?
No, so it's interesting. I was chatting to the COO of AIG here in EMEA, and he, he was saying that the rate of change in that organization has become profound. I used to work for AIG, and I can remember 10 years ago, the rate of change was already profound. So he's 10 years on saying they seem to have more change happening than we had 10 years ago. So I was just kind of interested, hey, is it that they've become so used to change? Because 10 years ago, we found change programs standing on each other or obstructing each other. And it was only when we started looking at the overall change and how it mapped to the strategy that we could essentially figure out a prioritization strategy to say which initiative or which aspect would receive more focus from employees.
Great question and great experience. Sharon, are you okay if I come to you? You mentioned earlier on about, I think it was you talking about getting more involved in agile implementation.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and I'll just add too, with the maturity assessment that we did, I highly recommend doing it because it does give you a baseline of where you're at as an organization. The PressI one's great. It does kind of help narrow down into 5 categories where you might need to focus more as an organization. So if you're not familiar with it, check it out. It's pretty good. And it did help us prioritize the work that we were doing to bring the capability up in its level. So as far as sorry, I'm trying to remember what we're talking about now. I was so excited about talking about maturity.
This is about speed and velocity within an organization.
Oh, speed and velocity. Oh, yeah, that's great point. Thank you, Paul. So it's massive. Let me just say that. Within our organization, it is massive. It has not stopped, and we've been told it will not stop. So to get comfortable with it, because it is here to stay. And I think the great thing is we're bringing in some of these change capabilities. We're teaching people how to do it. We have a community of practice, so we're talking about it more. But it doesn't make it easy, really, for anyone. And I just think we all need to remember that everybody goes through change differently. And we have to, and you can't build a change program that's going to satisfy everyone, right? So I think someone had said something about how are we about making people happy? And I would say, no. No, we're not. We're here to help them through the changes, but they still may not like the changes. And so, I mean, I'll just give a couple of things going on within the organization. Agile, for instance, there's a lot of people that are interested in it, but they really don't know what to do. So if you're not on a project team, how can you adopt agile ways of working? Well, you can't. There's certain components of it that can be applied to your work in every day. Work iteratively. Think about continuous improvement, get that feedback regularly. Those are just a few. It's like a mindset of how you want to approach it. But then if you're on a project team, there's even more to it. You have to follow the ceremonies of being agile. You want to have daily stand-ups. You want to have retrospectives. I mean, these are all great things to do. And as a change manager, I personally think agile is exactly what we talk about every day. And it's very interesting to me as I've started to learn more about working agilely. If that's a word, I think it is. And, bringing that to an organization that's fairly immature, even with just project management and change management, and trying now to bring in this, it's another component of change that people are not ready for. They're interested, but they're like, I don't know how to change how I do my job. Like, I do my job, I do it well. Stop telling me that I need to talk to people more. And so it is a very interesting dynamic. And I stress that I think it's not easy what we do and what we try to bring to the organization every day. But it's one of these things I say, don't give up. It's a journey. Everything is a journey, and you have to help people through the journey as best you can. So I don't know if that fully answered the question, but that's where I'm at with a lot of this. I look at everything as a journey. Don't expect people all to change at the same time, and to be patient and get that feedback regularly. I'm doing a bunch of focus groups next week on it. I can't stress it enough. Talk to people, because you have to know where they're at in order to help them through those changes.
So I think there's a really nice segue into yourself, Robin, here. You know, as a storyteller, as driving change, I want to add in, though, an international flavour. So, you know, you were picked up as, you know, having a change cultural language barriers. So this isn't just changing AIG here in the UK. This will be a global change. I mean, how have you found that, Robin?
Yeah, oh, sorry, Sharon.
No, go ahead. It's yours.
It's cool. So this was probably the most unique part of the project that I was on, which is how do you transfer the same consistency and same kind of things that you're trying to get across when you are working in different countries. I was incredibly fortunate to have a great team in Mexico to help me out, and I think that's one of the things that knowing those localizations and understanding how you can actually translate what we're trying to get across to teams in different countries is really important. The same messages, right? It's the same story that we're trying to tell. It's the same thing that we're trying to get. And it's very interesting. We've been talking about data and how we use data to become people-led and how we actually incorporate those things. And one of the things that we really wanted to do was to give people an opportunity to take the information that we were doing and make it their own. And we talked about ownership at the leadership level. We've talked about but actually, how do we actually use the employee voice, to actually tell our story as well? And in a local environment, actually making sure that we can actually give the people the ability to tell their story about what it's going to be like when we get there. And so in Mexico, it was very much about giving people the opportunity to say, hey, this change that we're going through is going to change what we do in our factory and what we do from a manufacturing perspective. But we know what that's going to mean to us, and we can actually say what the positives are and what the challenges are and what the opportunities are for us being able to do that. And it's about providing them the narratives that they can take themselves. I think it was Kate that said, you know, we as change practitioners, we don't own this change. It's the organization's change that they need to own themselves. We're just there to help them, enable them, give them the tools to be able to do that. And stories and all those kind of things that we've just been talking about can help that out.
Fantastic. Let's just do a little bit of audience participation. Okay. So the next question, you see at the bottom of the screen, we've got a reactions button. Does everyone see the reactions button at the bottom? Okay. I'm going to ask a question, and it's sort of leading to the next question. I want you to put a thumbs up if you see yourself more as a project manager, and I want you to do the clapping hands if you see yourself more as a change manager. So just a quick, so we've got clapping hands, clapping hands, clapping hands. Excellent. Okay, lots and lots of clapping hands. Okay, can't see any thumbs up actually. It's on the other screen.
I think the Zoom has evolved in a way that personally I can't see even the reaction button. Oh, I've got it. I've got it. Yes, clapping hands. Woo.
Yeah. We need the comms plan and the training plan, don't we?
For sure.
It's interesting that question, because everyone on this call will have asked this same question. You know, what's the difference between project management and change manager? You know, where are you? And what I believe is there's a big crossover between the two different skill sets, but there's this great big grey bit in the middle. And again, shameless plug, I think, do you have to be a full-on, you go to some organizations, do they need a full-on change manager? No, they probably need change management capabilities and train people to do it. Okay, some projects you absolutely do need it. But I want to ask that question. So if we think about project management, change management, and the grey bits, I want to really go into that bit. And I'm gonna come to you, Kate, I think. Right, basically where we are on your obviously the ASDA transformation, huge transformation, you must have massive crossovers. But how do you get into that grey bit? How do you work with the project managers?
Yeah, I was quite surprised when we started how many seasoned project managers we had who didn't really understand what change management did or the value of it now, whether through not having exposure or, you know, the practice evolving over the years. And I peddled my wares. I did a roadshow deck, and I made sure that the project managers and program managers and even senior program managers sometimes knew what change management brought to the table, that they were aware of. Listen, change always is outside the swim lanes. We've all seen the imagery, right? But I think sometimes there's a little bit with project managers or anyone really in life where you think you're in my lane. I don't need you to do my work. I'm okay, thanks. So it was being really clear about what change management and what my team were there to deliver, and actually the value that we could add to the project. And I was really, you can hear by the accent, I'm Irish. I do love a good story. But we articulated as in really, really honest of, you get to the end of a project and you've been so focused on data migration and platforms and all sorts of stuff. And then you're scrabbling around at the end going, oh, who do I need to tell? How are they going to be told how to log on? Oh, no one's ready for it. We haven't really thought about a hypercare plan. How to raise tickets. And we sort of did that very much from an early age. And then my change managers would very much be on the project calls. And I think someone mentioned it, and listen, we all get called in late, which is wonderful, but we tried where possible that we always had a spot. We always had a spot earlier on. And I think it's really important. And actually some of the relationships we have forged with the project managers, because we were business change, they were tech project managers, so we were two different functions as well. It has really worked, and actually they've seen the benefits of, oh, hold on, I've got a change manager and they're absolutely going to help me with all of the bits that I never knew. And someone else talked about the reason for change, and I'll tell this little bit of a story. Bev's on the call, so she'll laugh, she'll know what I mean. When I got one of the first conversations with project managers, when I started, I was on my own and I was looking after about 70,000 people. And I sat with a project manager and I said, okay, so talk me through this GNFR system. Why are we doing it? And bear in mind, I've been in ASDA 6 years. And he said, oh, did you not hear we've been sold? And that was literally typed on his project scope. So we've been sold, so we have to do this new system. I was like, oh, we can help you. But I do think, I'm probably going on a bit, but I do think it's really important. But it's being really clear on what they deliver and what you deliver, and how it benefits each other. But at the end of the day, 9.9 times out of 10, your change managers are the ones that are in the business, right? So we know how things are delivered. A lot of project managers, program managers get brought in for a certain amount of time, and they're trying to navigate all the organizational politics and where you go and what you do to get things over the line. So yeah, it's been wildly important, but it was a very steep learning curve at the start. When I was like, what do you mean you don't know what we do? We're change managers. Can't do it without us. They were like, well, I've never heard of you before, and I've been a project manager for, so yeah.
Before we move on, let's just, I think I can absolutely relate to that. So change manager, a project manager, let's do it again. Quick show of thumbs up if you've had that in your business. For me, 100%. I've seen that so many times. Okay. Yeah, quite a few. So I don't think you're on your own, Kate. I think that's what I'm trying to say with that. In fact, I think Robin's put about 400 thumbs up. So, he's basically seen it. We've probably got time on the speed that we're going at for 2 more questions, and I'm trying to balance time for everybody on the call. So Margot, have we got any other questions from the audience?
We don't have any more questions from the audience, just lots of comments, people agreeing, providing us with an input of how is it for them. But I wanted to say, Beverly Brooke, my view is that not change manager or project manager, it's both, all about building with your respect and delivery. I quite like that. Before we go to Joy, Joy has raised her or his hand. I'm sorry, again, not very good with names. I just wanted to say that interestingly, and I love that this came in as a segue so easily, in 2025, we are going to announce, well, it's happening already, but there is a new category that we will be promoting, and it's a Change and Project Management Partnership Award, because I believe that change managers and project managers need to love one another, understand what they do, and cooperate. So with that, Joy Flanagan, please unmute yourself and ask us a question.
There, sorry, I was struggling with Zoom and mute. I do apologise. Hi, Paul. Long time no see. Thank you. I've found this session really fascinating, and I would have to admit I've only this last year left a corporate career after 20 years working in the emergency services in the UK. And what I realised on reflection in my transition from leaving that to starting up on my own was that actually the same as some people on the call, I've kind of been doing change management for a long time, but it was never really called that. And I just really have a reflection, and it feels like most of the people on the call here have worked in the commercial world or the private sector, as I would call it. But and I listen kind of with sadness, because I think the public sector has so much to learn. And the last two projects or programs I worked on were national change. They were trying to bring about national change, ultimately getting either the fire services or all the emergency services working better together with their big aim of saving the public or keeping them safe. And we had fantastic program and project managers all over it like a rash, but we were working for a national body commissioned by the government to try and drive this change, but the people that needed to change were all remote organisations in their own right, with their own leadership, with their own day job. And so we're pushing in from the side going, okay, so in addition to all you do, we want you to pick up this new way of working together when you work with all of your colleagues at a multi-agent incident. And what I realise, and what's been criticised heavily, is that some of the things that we tried to introduce and said would be embedded to the government didn't get embedded. And I was fascinated earlier when somebody was talking, if you don't really get change management right, the likely outcome is you're not actually going to embed that change. And God, I wish I'd had this conversation 10 years ago and could have influenced some people, but there's still time maybe. So I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. It wasn't really a question, it was an observation, but I am fascinated, and I think if any of you can knock on any doors in the public sector, I think there's a lot of education to do on that side of the fence.
So,
yeah, we actually have a public sector discussion in October as well. So some winners from the public sector are literally going to go through a similar type of roundtable. But and I think one of the reasons why we have decided to keep those two separate is because we want to draw a conclusion of what are those lessons learned and what are the biggest differences. And having been on both sides, I appreciate there's a lot. And it's not only the monetary side of it, obviously, but we cannot have a VR virtual reality glasses given for everybody because we have money to do that. No, it's not like that. So there's plenty of different differences. So it'll be quite interesting to see what does the community of the winners from the public sector has to say.
Absolutely, Joy. Lovely to see you again. We must reach out. I used to work with Joy many years ago. I've spent a lot of time both Ofsted, Department of Health, Home Office, absolutely echo what you said. You know, driving change there is a different animal. You know, even to the point where unless you've got somebody at a certain level, you can't make decisions.
Yep.
So, you know, you miss that when you go private, because, you know, at least they can make decisions, but if you can't get hold of one, you can't make a decision. So there's lots of differences between the two. Well, let me finish on one question. If we've got no other questions, and then Margot, I'll hand back over to you if that's okay after I finish. So one of the things, so I try and categorize people's appetite for change in different ways. Okay, so you have your change advocates, you have your, you know, your apathies, and the lowest level, but most important, to be fair, is what I call the change terrorists. The people who really not only don't get the change, but they don't want other people to get the change. So actually, if you can convert one of those guys or girls, you know, you'll get more bang for your buck than maybe somebody on another level, right? But if you go into an organization and you have a lot of change terrorists, and Rose, I saw you nodding your head. I'm coming to you with this question, right? So basically, what can we do? So if we've got an organization where we're going in trying to implement a lot of change with a lot of change terrorists, what options have we got?
Yeah, I mean, it's an excellent question, and I'm thrilled I get to answer this really tricky one. I think this comes back to relationships for me. So I know that a brilliant point was raised earlier, which is how do we build more of a change management capability with more individuals? So what sprung to mind for me is like change networks and getting management at all levels to actually understand change management. And all that means is being able to connect with the people that you lead, or even your best friend at work, or, you know, people that you work with, and actually understanding how they're feeling about either one big change that's coming through, or, you know, the culture, or kind of whatever is causing that resistance. And I feel that, you know, sometimes it's not very effective to have, I, for example, as am a consultant, so I have to go into organizations where I'm not a member of that organization and sort of say, you know what, this new change is going to be fantastic because the business has told me to do it. And yes, I know that that means your process is now going to take 5 extra hours, but I promise you'll love it. Whereas actually, if we were able to get someone who is close to that individual who is a change terrorist already trusts and has a rapport with, and they go, look, Mike, what really is it that's making you feel stressed? Or even if you can mobilize different people through that network and say, look, yes, I was skeptical at first, but actually let me show you, I think this is going to be good for us because. So I think it goes back to relationships. I think the best way to tackle it is to get lots of people involved in change networks and to give them really clear guidance from what Robin was talking about on some key talking points, and get them to go away and have conversations, and also to make it their own and sort of sell that change in whatever way they think is appropriate and that works with that individual. But I also think we shouldn't be shying away from resistance. I think we should be trying to open up the discussion and understanding, you know, when I have conversations about change, I often ask, is there anything you're nervous about? Is there anything that you're a bit scared about? And sometimes that is totally revolutionary, and someone will say, oh yes, I'm actually really nervous about that thing, and then we can build it into our change plan and we can really address it. So I think it is about open conversations and relationships, and utilizing as many people in the business as possible and giving them the tools to listen and then work with a change management team to address that.
Fantastic. And echo that. I mean, we can call them different names. We've got an influencer network at one of the clients I'm with. I call that indirect stakeholder engagement. So I may not be able to influence, but somebody else can. So I think that's all really good points.
April has her hand raised.
Oh, excellent. Go for it.
Well, I appreciate and support what Rose just said. However, I think we also have to recognize that sometimes people will leave, and that's okay.
Okay.
Sometimes they are resistant and they don't want to be a part of the change. And no matter how we reach out to them with our networks and rationale and talking points, we cannot convince them that this is the right path for them. And I think we have to be okay with that and say, you know, I have been in situations where I have left an organization to find something so much better for me, like a much better fit. And I just think that we should not be afraid of anybody stomping their foot and saying, well, if you don't stop doing this, I'm going to leave. I think we say, we've loved having you. Yeah. And we're not going, you know, we're not, I like your terminology, Paul, because I think terrorist is really the description, right? Like, if you don't do what I want, I'm going to take my stuff and go home, or I'm going to destroy this place. And I think we have to sometimes call that and say, we're not going forward with your resistance, right? Like, you can decide to choose to go or to change. So I hate to sound like the mean parent, but I really feel strongly that we cannot help everybody adopt change. Sometimes we just have to say, it's great to know you.
I agree. And there's a saying, I'm not a massive fan of it, but it epitomizes what you said, is you change the people, you change the people at the end of the day. And I think, you know, that's the journey's the journey. The people need to come on the journey, or they've got a right to say, I don't want to come on the journey. That's entirely up to them. I agree. I don't.
Sorry, Paul, can I just ask a question? Have you ever had a top performer, you know, a major contributor in an organization going, no, I'm not going to change? And, you know, where the loss of that person is actually a huge impact to the organization. You know, I'm interested because it's like, I've seen this where, in fact, the person who's maybe a top performer and is producing more than you'd expect them to has a viable message to the organization and to the process that you're trying to change, to say, hey, I've seen this and I've got a better way of doing it.
Well, I don't know who you're directed to, Paul, but I'm in that place where I have seen that, and many times I will pause. That will give me pause. It won't make me backtrack or say we won't implement, but I do want to hear what they have to say, because sometimes we are proceeding without knowing all the information, and sometimes that top performer has information that nobody else understands. So I always want to do that gut check, like, really, what is happening here? And if what they are saying is so revolutionary, like, oh, I had no idea that this would happen, I will bring that to a leadership conversation. However, I do feel like sometimes those top performers, whether we like to admit it or not, even though they are far and above everyone else, sometimes they're the reason that people are not performing better, because of that person. And so sometimes a change in that direction may not be the worst thing. You know, other people have to step up and expand their skills and really step into a different level of participation. And I think that's really beneficial. And sometimes you see dysfunctional behaviors completely dissolve when that top performer goes, even though it's very painful for the organization. We lose a lot of knowledge.
Yeah, very insightful. Thanks, April.
Ravina has her hand
I was
raised.
going to say, 1 second, Ravina, this will probably need to be the last question, or the last comment, and then I'll hand back, if that's okay.
Yeah, I was just adding to what Bruce said, that you know, when you have top performers who are not the biggest advocates or followers of their change, the attention often goes to convincing them and coaching them that why that change is important, right? So this kind of leads to many other impacts, you know, what April called out, but being a top performer can also be a virtue sometimes for what your change is all about, but most likely is a strength in terms of giving a perspective, and then in turn they become influencers of your change. So it works hand in hand. It's never black and white. There is that seriousness of gray area that does get involved in these kind of cases, but most likely I've seen that the people who kind of are top performers, who are not who are resistant to change, the effort to give them a perspective is much higher, and this is where I think the story changes when you're talking about stakeholder management, the different personas, the adoption levels. So yes. All right, Paul, over to you.
Yeah, fantastic. No, very, very fair point. So let me draw a line under the session today. I personally want to thank the speakers, so April, Kate, Sharon, Ravina, Robin, Rose. Don't think I missed anybody. Thank you for giving your time up. Really appreciate it. I learned stuff. And my quote at the beginning was basically, you should never stop learning. So basically, these sorts of sessions are brilliant. So it doesn't matter whether you've got 1 year or 30 years, you'll always use something different. Last shameless plug, if you like things like change terrorists and stuff, you're going to love the Change Tracker. Go to thechangetracker.com, go and have a look, sign up. And that's it. So Margot, I'm going to hand it back to you to close with the final slide, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everybody. I really enjoyed the session. I was at the very beginning of the session, I was thinking, my goodness, 1.5 hours is probably a little bit too long. But as the conversation is becoming more and more interesting, I was thinking, oh, wow, the time has passed so quickly. It could have been maybe additional half an hour, but obviously, let's be realistic. So thank you very much. I just wanted to quickly share my screen if it allows me now. Anna, I'm nodding to you. I hope it's sharing my screen.
It is, yeah.
It is, okay. Just a quick thing from the Change Awards. So we are working on, so the categories are built and they are available on our website. You can go there and download them. In November, on the 1st of November, we are hoping to have everything ready on the website. So if you wanted to start looking at the categories and preparing yourselves for applications, the questions are going to be available. You can go in, log in, and have a look and start writing the case study and start getting those questions ready and sign off internally within your organizations if that's the need as well. And then in January, we have the applications open. So 1st to the 31st of January this time, just for a whole month, we've got the applications open, and then obviously shortlist in March, and on the 10th of April, to Change Awards ceremony. So these are the key dates from us. One additional point, obviously the recording is going to be available. We will be doing write-ups as well, and we will be tagging all of our winners on our social media channels and the website to highlight the top of the conversation that we had. And on the 10th of October this year, just thinking out loud, yes, on the 10th of October this year, so in a few weeks' time, we have an additional session where we focus on the same type of top subjects and topics, but for the public sector. So that's it from me. Thank you, everybody. I really enjoyed it. And thank you one more time to Paul. Thank you to Karen. And obviously, most importantly, to our winners for joining the session and providing a lot of knowledge.